Good evening. I call together us for a work session of the Morrisville Town Council, August 27th, 2026. We have three items that we're going to be speaking about tonight. The first is data centers, then key to the town, and then our town council roundtable. At this time, I'd like to recognize Deputy Town Manager Giselle Rodriguez to introduce our presenters for the first item. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. So I am pleased to introduce this evening to you the topic of data center state and regional overview. This topic is very timely. As we have seen, there's a lot of excitement about this particular topic. It's significant for our community and for the region as well, as data centers continue to shape the economic development, infrastructure planning, policy decisions all across North Carolina and across the nation as well. So tonight we are fortunate to have I want to say two experts, because they have been doing so much work in this topic. We have with us Grace Berry, Management Analyst, and Alana Keegan, a Local Government Services Director with the Central Pines Regional Council. And they have been doing some work, particularly related to data centers across the region and working with multiple municipalities. And we felt that this was the right time for us to, as we have heard the topic around us, we haven't had a topic as a group. And we felt it was the opportunity for us to bring you a high level information about the topic, and then we can decide what's next, right? Where do we go from here? Do we need to talk about this a little more? But the intent for tonight is to provide you a high level information that can allow you to ask questions and be able to define any additional information that we may need. And at the same time, it will help you be plugged into what the work that is happening in the region, and specifically the work that Central Pines has been doing with others. So without further ado, I would like to turn it over to Grace and Elena, and they will guide you through the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. It's great to be with you all. As Giselle said, I'm Elena Keegan. I'm the Local Government Services Director. And I'm just going to provide a little bit of an introduction into how we started talking about this work, and then turn it over to Grace, who's started with us as a Lead for NC Fellow, if you've had any interaction with that program. And little did she know that she would become a data center expert in a fellowship program, and now she's a full-time staff member with us. So this work started about a year ago for our organization. We started hearing both from management level staff and from planning staff looking for resources on data centers. And that's spanned a wide range of information resources, water resources, zoning resources, just best practices that we could find. And so we heard about it enough that we decided to start putting some time into this topic. And tonight we're going to just share some things that we've been doing to track on this topic and some resources that we've been compiling on your behalf. And we're always happy to hear other ideas of ways we can be helpful, or if there's questions that we can answer about this topic, we're more than happy to do that. So with that, I will turn it over to Grace to start walking through some overview materials that we have.
Awesome. I want to make sure I'm not talking too loud. So, hope you guys are doing well. Oh no, I might have messed it up. Trying to. Let's see where's. There we go. Awesome. So, in front of you here, you can see a regional snapshot. I know the text is a little bit small, so I'm going to go through these. And so at the top, you can see a legend that we've created, where that dark orange is going to be a moratorium has been enacted, that navy will be reviewing, the yellow will be an ordinance update, and then the gray will be no formal action. And so you can see, obviously, a lot of moratoriums have been enacted. You're probably aware of these, just staying in the know, but Chatham County has a 1-year pause through February 2027. We can see Orange County with a 1-year pause through April 21st, 2027. And then Hillsborough had an initial 2-month moratorium, and they decided to actually extend that all the way until May 2027, which seems to be a preferable date. And then City of Durham, 60-day moratorium extended through May 2027. Then the most recent update is Durham County, they actually have a moratorium now that was enacted, and so it's no longer an ordinance update. And they have a 9-month moratorium on new large-scale data centers, also through May 2027. And then for Wake County and the town of Cary, they're still in that reviewing process. Apex, Wendell, Holly Springs have 1-year moratoriums. And then Johnston County, no formal action. Lee County and Sanford, they added data center specifics to their UDO. And then with Moore County, also no formal action. And then rounding it out with you all with an ordinance update amended in 2025 to allow data centers in different zoning districts with the approval of a special use permit.
I'll just add on this chart. So Durham County, this happened this week. You may have seen that in the news. And Lee County and Sanford are one of the few that has actually amended really recently. So that's the one example that we've seen where they've not chosen to move into a moratorium, and they've actually moved ahead with updating their ordinance with data center specific language in the past few months. But most of the recent activity has been either no action or moving into moratoriums in the region so far.
Entering into a moratorium with the expectation that they're going to update their UDO. I assume all of them.
Correct. I believe that is the case. All of them are, most of them specifically clarify giving staff time to determine language for their UDO.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Did you want to take questions during or wait till the end?
We're happy to take questions during, that's fine.
Okay.
If there's
We have
others.
a couple of people who have them already then. Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, followed by Councilmember Scroggins. Okay, we're good. We'll let you know if there's questions.
Awesome.
I just wanted you to know who I was.
So obviously what's relevant to us here today is what the key considerations are for local governments and navigating data centers and how rapidly things are approaching. And so I think we've tried to break this down into about 6 different categories. Obviously, this is not all inclusive, so just keep that in mind. And I think starting off with infrastructure demand, as you know, hyperscale data center facilities are going to require 100+ megawatts of energy and sometimes 1 million+ gallons of water per day, which is going to create a lot of new considerations for our utilities departments and just generally long-term infrastructure planning for different towns and cities. And then obviously that bleeds into land use and planning. At Central Pines, we've had a lot of help from our planners navigating our data center work, which has been really important. But also our North Carolina communities are having to evaluate their zoning standards, specifically related to data center siting, the setbacks from data centers, noise, screening, lighting, and just generally land use compatibility. But also they have to figure out the role of planning and avoiding overinterpretation of local authority, which I think is really important, is understanding who is allowed to do what in full transparency. And then obviously community impacts with beyond the technical considerations, they're also going to be balancing how the community feels about data centers, which is something that we've all probably seen within the media recently. It's just something that's being discussed constantly. And so having to navigate community questions and perceptions with a lot of new information coming in is a lot, which is why we hope to be a resource for you all. And then also we wanted to speak on property tax under the community impact section. That was something specifically mentioned to us that would be important. And so Wake County has given us permission to share its experience in this regard. And so when they're looking at smaller scale data centers as an example for how property taxes are effective, they found that the taxable value of the facilities are declining very quickly. And that's because the value of the facilities is tied to the equipment in the facility, like a server, the connectors, racks and those things depreciate very quickly over time. And so I guess what we think is just important to take a conservative approach when looking at and estimating long-term tax revenues from data centers.
Do you have any statistics or a comparative table on the size of the data center versus the size of the data center and the anticipated resource consumption?
So we are, and it's like a fun preview for the end, but we've been drafting a ordinance for UDO amendments. And so in that, we are working with different experts to put together that type of, exactly what you're saying, that type of side-to-side comparison to create that universal level of comparison of what makes something hyperscale versus what is another type of data center. And so those definitions will be present in the draft ordinance that we are producing.
And I'll add that defining data center by the magnitude has been one of the most, we have a very difficult process. Not necessarily because of what's happening today, but because there's some unknowns about what they'll look like in several years. And so uniquely in North Carolina, there's, the zoning you put in place right now, at least right now in North Carolina, you can't then change it in certain ways. And so there's questions about how the technology will change and its impact on the square footage of data centers, the water usage. So some of the ways that you would traditionally measure a type of zoning or development are hard to predict in the future. We can make some assumptions right now. So that's been a very almost philosophical debate in our working group on ordinance language.
Do you have any data on or comparison on the number of jobs data centers create compared to the same size building of other businesses?
I know that we do. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but they are definitely not creating as many jobs.
Thank you.
I think it's actually mostly in the construction of the data center.
Like the upfront in construction, and then you really see that trickle off as they're maintained, in regard to employment. All right, so moving on, definitely top of mind for a lot of people would be environmental impact. And as we noted in the beginning of the presentation, data centers place a lot of demand on our energy grid, on our water supply, and other infrastructure, especially when you're looking at those hyperscale data centers. And so what we've been doing in our working group is having conversations with these providers, so water providers, utility providers, to actually understand what impact we're up against and how to input that into our draft ordinance so that what we're collecting, the best practices are from those that are directly involved with these different providers like utilities and water. And then avoiding UDO duplication, I think, has been one of the most important things that we have been wanting to stress when we have spoke to different communities about data centers. Obviously, communities are already going to have some standards for lighting or landscaping, traffic, building design, and enforcement. And so it's really important for our communities before adding anything that's data center specific to make sure that what's in their UDO doesn't already cover what they would be adding and that the impacts are unique and specific to
Can you
data
give some
centers.
examples of things that might be data center specific that would a UDO would cover?
Noise would be one of the larger ones that's come up specific to data centers. They have a unique noise concern that I believe comes from their equipment. They often have a lot of generators on site that can make noise, and then there's this, I don't know exactly the technology, but high frequency or low frequency, one that you kind of almost can't hear. And so that has been a large consideration, as well as general look of the facility, because at least at the hyperscale level, they are large. Noise would be one of the most unique ones.
Thank you. That's really helpful explanation. And obviously, evolving state and federal policy surrounding data centers is moving, it's still taking shape. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen. And so, as communities are considering local standards, it's just important to stay updated and in the know of what needs to be addressed locally and then also what needs to be addressed specifically at the state level. And I think that leads us into talking a little bit more about those impacts.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share just a little bit about what's happening at the federal and state levels. Um, the high level answer at the federal level is there has not been any notable legislation on data centers. There have been proposals, none have gone through, none that would impact local zoning or land use conversations that you might be having. There are some executive level actions looking at speeding up permitting. None of that has taken place in a way that is a mandate to local governments. And there's been some pledges that are not necessarily binding by large companies that may be interested in that they will cover their own power costs. So these are the large 7 major tech companies made a pledge with the White House to do that, since that's very much a concern that comes up in the public conversation about data centers.
When you say they cover their own costs, they have to cover their costs, right? So they're not getting free.
Well, I'm not sure how it would work in practice, but the pledge was that it wouldn't be put into the larger system and then residential customers would be paying an increased rate because of the demand. The infrastructure that goes into adding that capacity might increase the costs.
Do you see in the future, I just read an article like Fort Bragg has its own nuclear reactor kind of a thing. So I can think all these people will start doing the same thing and be independent of.
Yes, and informally, I don't have a great number of data points to this, but when we've had some conversations with folks at the state level, it sounds like companies are beginning to try and provide their own power on site because the timeline of waiting for the infrastructure to be built through Duke would be so long. So that is definitely, if not already happening on the horizon. Yeah.
Got a question on that. So when they're saying cover their own power costs rather than shift them onto residential customers, is that effectively saying that they will, you're just saying that generating power on site, but having generators that burn fossil fuel that then pollute the air?
That's definitely a possibility. I think there's less awareness of what that would look like since they would be building it on their own. But it does get to another piece of the conversation that, some of that would trigger state regulations around air quality and other elements of the environmental impact piece of it. So we don't really know how they will. We don't know. Maybe someone knows. But yes, it's very possible. Other activity at the federal level has mostly, that we've really seen go through, focused on just grid concerns and grid interconnections. So that's much a larger scale conversation on energy. The state level has had still not a ton of formal action, but definitely more relevant action for the day-to-day work that the town may be considering. So there's 2 different pieces to what's been happening at the state level, the governor and the agency level. The governor has taken 2 actions. The first was last year to establish an energy policy task force, which one of their main recommendations was to remove the exemption on electricity purchases for data centers, which was included in the state budget that the governor has signed. So specifically state tax exemption for electricity purchases has been removed, but equipment incentives have not been. That's the only formal action that has been taken at the state level on data centers. There's a lot of agencies talking about it. We've had some great conversation with DEQ and some others who have regulatory roles in things like air quality. The one other bill that was formally proposed that we were monitoring really closely because it did pass through both chambers but never got a final vote was a bill called the Ratepayer Protection Act. And some notable things that were included in this that we just have used to kind of guide our ordinance conversation and other conversations about water usage. The bill really focused on noise and water. And so just as a tea leaf of where the state may decide that they want to have a role, we're taking that as a sign. They specifically focused on data centers that we call hyperscale, so the 100 megawatt or greater. Obviously, there might be impacts from a smaller size than that, but that's where they really focused. And so this legislation, which is not law, but was moving, would require closed loop water systems for all data centers in the state, would require applicants to provide an assessment of their noise to any local government that they're applying to develop in, and would require DEQ to establish water use standards for data centers by this fall. Obviously, we're almost there, so they're not going to do that by September 1st. So there really hasn't been any impact at the state level, especially on the zoning side. But we assume that there is something coming, and so we're continuing to monitor that, especially on the water use side for our utilities purpose, to make sure that we can be proactive on those impacts.
We've kind of spoken to this a little bit, and apologies, it's cut off a bit at the top. But I'm just going to talk a little bit about what Central Pines has been doing in our regional response. And so the first thing that I think we really started off with was just having open regional discussions. I know we heard from a couple of different avenues that we were one of the first places to just kind of start convening to talk about data centers. And then as we move forward, we really leverage the expertise of the people in our community and that we're able to contact with being a council of governments. So we were able to engage with Bruce Venable at the town of Apex. He's put together some incredible research and resources and is helping us navigate creating a tier system to identify the different mega wattage for each type of data center, as well as helping us compile together the best definitions for each of these things, which has been very helpful. And then, as Elena mentioned, we've had conversations with DEQ's leadership, which has been really helpful to just kind of understand genuinely what is going on in regard to decommissioning wastewater and then air quality concerns. And as well as that, we partnered with Wake County to host a regional zoning working group to support just general peer learning about data centers. But as we've mentioned, it was really created to begin drafting and developing a data center ordinance. And that is really in progress right now. And things that we've already completed, we've created a resource hub, which is accessible on our website. We'll have the QR code later. We've created a defining data centers white paper, which is kind of a really deep dive overview into the basics of if you were just diving into understanding the arena in general. And then we also have created a moratory tracker for our member communities, which we provided a snapshot for at the beginning of our presentation. We've hosted a lot of speakers that have spoken about data centers. Specifically, during our regional day event, we had Michael Turner from Loudoun County, Virginia, to share their lessons learned, which is, I think, called Data Center Alley is what they call it. So that was really cool to have him come and speak to our member communities, even if we aren't looking at the exact same thing. It was nice to learn from what he had seen. And then recently, we had our executive director, Lee Worsley, host at the North Carolina Teachers Association panel on data center growth. And so that was really awesome to get to be a part of. And then next month, we will be in Holly Springs presenting to their Land Use Advisory Committee on some of these same things here, but also some different research interests that they have. All right, so moving on to a little bit more in the weeds about the draft ordinance. So the model ordinance is going to be a starting point for communities that are reviewing existing regulations that address data center development. It is not supposed to replace a community's UDO or supposed to be adopted as a catch-all ordinance, and that's something we really wanted to communicate. So communities should be reviewing the UDO first, what's addressed in their own, and then other local regulations. And where those adequate standards exist, those should continue instead of creating a duplicate data center specific requirement if it were to be the same exact requirement. So our model is supposed to help fill different gaps and just provide language and best practices that communities can adapt that are going to be traditionally what's going to need to be addressed for data centers. And so it's not necessarily our stance or our opinion on things, but just best practices and convening experts in the region and research that we've been able to dive into. And so the ordinance is organized into 8 main sections. You can see here, I'm not going to read everything off, but the first section is authority, purpose, and intent. It addresses legal basis of the ordinance. We have different definitions, which will include that kind of tiered scale that we spoke about. Section 3 is use classification and zoning, so where things might be permitted or not permitted. Obviously, we know that this is going to be very community specific, and we have context throughout the ordinance that makes sure that communities are guided to check their UDO first. Section 4 would be application requirements, so pre-review, post-review, noise studies, things of that nature. Section 5, supplemental use standards. Then we have monitoring and reporting. Section 7 is enforcement, and then Section 8 would be administration. And so it kind of just walks through each of these different sections. So how we crafted the ordinance is, it was kind of all over the place, but it really started with combining kind of national evidence, so national research. It started with a lot of webinars, listservs, emerging research, and different examples across the country, and not just in our community. We really looked pretty wide. And so our ordinance specifically draws a lot from APEX's 2026 research and also the York County, South Carolina model ordinance, as well as different ordinances from North Carolina and Virginia. And we've provided the specific North Carolina state statutes and regulations. And Central Pines is also obviously going to continue to see what is developing and what would need to be amended in this draft. And so we're looking at North Carolina requirements very specifically, DEQ's requirements, North Carolina building and fire codes, because really our goal with this is not to just recreate and regurgitate standards that already exist. We actually want this to be helpful. And so speaking about that, working group input, I think has been the most helpful, having planning staff from across the region to dive through each section of this draft, compare it to what they're seeing at their local standards, and provide us areas where more research and technical input is going to be important. So letting us know where we might need to do a little bit of outreach to figure out something in the most professional way. And so
I'll add on the working group. So this was specifically an invite of communities that we knew were working on their ordinance language, specifically on this topic. So I think there's 10 communities maybe across our 7 counties, and they represent a very wide range of communities. So the hope is that it reflects every community's general needs, and also got ahead of some communities who we knew were actively making changes, so that they could be a part of the process instead of getting really far down the road and then discovering that they would have appreciated being a part of the conversation before they adopted something. We know everyone is trying their best to put together the most useful zoning language on this topic. So it's a smaller subset of our 50 communities, but it hopefully reflects the dynamic of our region and all the different types of communities that are involved.
yeah, thank you. So looking at conversations with experts, I think the most recent thing that we've had come up is Apex has shared its input from a noise consultant. And so that will be something that we will input into that section of the draft UDO, and something that we really wanted to push forward with our working group is having expert knowledge and then bringing it back so that we can inform this ordinance. And then you'll see going forward, we have here that section 5 really contains the bulk of what the data center specific standards are going to be. You can see here they're listed out from site and land use all the way down to long-term operations. these are going to be all of the specific topics that are tackled in this draft ordinance that have also had input from planners and experts across the region, as well as just best practice research in general.
When you say data centers, I think that's very loosely used word, to be honest, because I built 6 data centers from my hand, literally hands, like 2 in Phoenix, 2 in Kansas City, and 2 here. And I understand how much noise it makes because the Chinpage Road has the AT&T data center, and I worked for AT&T for 20 years. It has pretty much the fans of almost, I would say, 2 floors. It's if you've seen the Guns of Navarone like movie, that's the kind of thing that and we turn it on once in a while. But I want to be very clear, the data centers you're talking about is more hyperscale data centers and GPU centers, not the regular data centers, because both are 2 different beasts. And that's the reason when people keep saying data centers, there is hyperscales are like 100 acres and 300 megawatts of usage. But that is not we are talking about. And so the word is very loosely used.
Yeah, and I know that's been part of the definition process, is figuring out how to make sure that, because there are already operating data centers, like you're saying, in our region, that are often much smaller scale or are not having the impacts that people are concerned about with hyperscale. So being mindful of the different scale sizes has been really important in this process. Because obviously the smaller ones don't have the impacts that everyone's concerned about. So,
And our goal in the draft ordinance, as per recommended by some of the members of our working group, similarly to you, were asking us to be sure that we include definitions for everything that might be a question. So every single type of data center and any type of specific definition that may not be explained within the ordinance. That was a really good recommendation for us to be sure that we're addressing everything that someone might be concerned about or thinking about. So thank you so much for your comment. So turn my microphone on. So for our regional response, just moving forward, we are in the process of finalizing our model ordinance draft by the end of September. I almost said this month, but it's not September yet. And so that is what's coming up next. And then also, we just wanted to mention that alongside the draft ordinance, there will be a use guide to help communities actually know how to work through each section and identify where their existing UDO language kind of intersects where our draft language is and how they can use it to be useful to their specific community. And then we will also share the draft ordinance and key findings with the state in hopes to just help broader inform conversations around data centers and the best practices that we've seen through our regional convenings that we've been doing over this past year. Obviously, we're going to continue to moderate what's going on at the state and federal level because we want to make sure that the ordinance is constantly and always aligned with those changing requirements, or it's pretty much null. And then what's really important is to have ongoing and consistent conversations with our providers, so utilities, water providers, and other technical providers, so that they can actually tell us what we need to prepare for and what to look for. And then as we move forward, we will continue our regional convenings and technical assistance to our communities that are navigating interest in data centers, or they're getting sightings, or they're just feeling the rumblings of a potential data center. We're here to help you guys out and kind of parse out the path forward. We're not complete experts, but we have a lot of people that can help us and planners that are able to figure out for each of our specific communities how to navigate this.
Question, who is the target audience here? The reason I ask that is Wake Fund is almost getting built out. You know, to do those hyperscales is pretty hard. But are you guys, I think personally, you guys should be targeting the small towns who have no knowledge, and people go and get the UDO changes, and second, you know, by right they have it. I know Ascoli or something, it has the Google or Amazon, I don't know, hyperscale. And is it getting restricted on the DEQ side? Because that is the only way to stop for the water. And other than that, like, you know, many of the small towns have no clue what it is. And many people think, oh, it's the tax dollars, and it very quickly depreciates. So are you guys going beyond, I know Triangle J, I was there for several years, but, you know, more of the small towns where like they have large pieces of land? I think those are the targets that all these companies are looking for.
Yeah, we're trying to reach as many communities, as at least in our footprint, we are directly trying to reach across all 7 counties. As our region grows, there are fewer and fewer small rural communities in our region, but we still do have a good number in Johnston and Chatham and Lee and Moore to some extent, which are part of our region. I think there's also I will say, our working group includes some larger communities, and no one is doing something. I think everyone is benefiting from the conversation, especially on the zoning side, mostly because there is a lot of pressure to get it right on zoning because of the downzoning issue that there is at the state level. And so there's a lot of, everyone wants to just make sure what they put in place will last for a long time. And there's a lot of unknowns about things like technology and all that, as I said. So there's definitely less pressure, and there's a lot less places for it to happen in Wake County, but I think everyone is happy to have a working space to be talking about this topic because there's just a lot of public pressure on it. So, yeah, but we are definitely trying to reach our smaller communities. We have some staff who actually are planning staff for the small communities, which helps because we can help get ahead of some of that, because some of them see it as a great source of revenue, and it can be a great source of revenue.
And for Morrisville particularly, we don't control water. We take it from Erie, so, and electricity, obviously, we are so far behind to do anything here. But, yeah, thanks.
I know this probably isn't within your purview, but I did want to say that I hope that at the state level, or even that at the federal level, that someone is going to be looking out for minority communities, which is where this type of thing does tend to get placed. You know, first it was hog farms, now it's going to be data centers. And you park this in the backyard of people that don't have the money or the resources to fight you, and it just increases generational inequities. So I don't know if you've heard anything along that line. I know that this probably isn't a great time politically to have that conversation, but I just wondered if you had heard anything.
I think mostly we've just heard it more from a rural perspective. Our communities that are rural and are in need of money are looking at it as an opportunity. And it can provide money, so that is not to diminish that that's a possibility, but there's also a lot of other impacts that come with that. So we haven't had that piece of the conversation to this point.
So is there anything you need from us, or are we just sort of having a little discussion in reaction to what you?
Yeah, I mean, we would love to hear if there's resources that you think would be helpful, if there's speakers you think would be helpful. Your staff will be receiving, and I'm sure you all are welcome to look when we have the template ordinance, but this is just meant to be informational. So,
Okay. So I had a couple of thoughts. I'll start with and Councilmember Garamella brought up the fact, very interesting, like where can it be done by right now? And have you guys tried to create some kind of sample language or best practice to get ahead of that for all 50? Look at each one and say, okay, you have risk right here. And if you want to not have it happen by right before you know it, these would be your steps. Is that part of your effort?
It hasn't been to directly assess each community's zoning, but we certainly could do that. I think most of our communities did not have it as language at all, as a definition in their documents already. So most of them are adding it in as a definition. I think Chatham County may be one that had it in there and has had some changes, but that's a great idea.
So that
We
might be a
had not.
value add coming off the by right, because that's, once it's happened, it's too late. Another thought, what is the risk of the federal government saying that municipalities cannot say no, like they did many years ago with cell towers? Are you assessing that risk and trying to figure out what we can do to advocate against that type of blanket statement?
Yeah, there's been general statements pushing, development of it. We haven't seen anything legislatively come out that would be indicating that that's going to happen anytime soon. It would obviously be a concern, and we haven't seen anything at the state level, which is also useful, but that's another great space for us to look into.
Okay, as you get to the defining data centers and how to use it, will you be able to also provide like some AI prompts to people to say, okay, put your UDO here, put this here, help have AI integrate it, like to save
Yeah.
them time? That might be a good thing to come at it with an AI expert about which prompts would help them to do that.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, there is, for sure. There's One Water, when you talk about 1 million gallons a day. And the One Water concept is that all water is good. Brown water, used water should be reused. So I need a little education about this water that goes through a data center doing the cooling and it comes out the other side. Is it useful for anything else?
So, yeah, I'll try and please correct me if I missed anything. Do you want to answer? Okay.
So, so I'm an HVAC design engineer. So, this is used for cooling. So you have an open loop system and a closed loop system. The open loop system is basically you have a cooling tower that feeds a chiller, let's say, and that's what keeps all the all the racks cool. In an open loop system, it's evaporative cooling, so the water is put into these cooling towers, and then it just evaporates away. So that's how it's taken in a million gallons of water. That water is then getting evaporated.
Becomes clouds and comes back into the environment.
Potentially, but it also, it's taken water away from the community.
Yeah, I know there's been, from some of the utilities, they've indicated that the general concern around water is just how much, even if it's a closed loop system is a preferred from our research, but it still uses a lot of water. And so for utilities, obviously, considering how much water is being taken from other uses, that's something to keep in mind. The other piece that's water, but it's wastewater. So DEQ was really stressing the wastewater impacts that will come out. So when whatever comes out of the facility is often very hot, and there's some sort of, either from the equipment or the treatment, it completely renders it like useless as a water source. Yeah, so figuring out where that goes is a large concern, and which bodies of water. So that's something that DEQ, when we had them come speak to one of our groups, said there's been a lot of conversation about water, but we'd actually encourage there to be equal conversation about wastewater because of the impacts that there could be from the wastewater.
Because back in like the 2010s, when Vicki and I first got on the council, there was talk about Jordan Lake having enough water for like 50 years. I'm not sure what that number is now, but it'd be good for you all to sort of dig into that and sort of give us what the expectations are. And if data centers do come up a lot more, what will that change? How will that look differently into the future? Getting really granular in municipalities, since the noise is an issue, would the notifications about zonings and rezoning requests be larger than the 500 feet that we have now, for example. That might be something to look at to make sure that you're protecting the municipality a little bit more and giving them a little bit more.
Yeah. I think one of the standards, the distance is much more than 500 feet, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, in our ordinance, we have kind of adopted that kind of perspective of taking, if there's a like max buffer that we've seen in best practice, that's what we've listed and then given context, but we will definitely make sure that we're looking into that and addressing that as
But
well.
it's been higher than 500.
Yeah.
For hyperscale.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess if you could add to your presentation what hyperscale looks like compared to what we're used to. Is it an Amazon warehouse? Is it two of them? You might know better than most of us. What is hyperscale? I have no idea. Is it like Lenovo Center? What is
No, like hyper.
It is.
It's like 100 megawatts, you know, it's on a 100-acre. There's a design for it already, like, you know, you can get 100 megawatts hyperscale on 100 acres.
So
That's
that
the amount
image
of
would be
data.
helpful for people. Like, this is the Lenovo Center. This is the hyperscale.
I think we've actually seen it.
One of our planners
Did that?
made that really quickly and just sent it over just randomly. That's crazy that he had that same exact example side by side. But that's a great idea to add in there.
And we're talking about energy and how it takes so much. Is it possible to, in new ordinances, essentially require for a solar offset? Require them to have solar or something? Probably not, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's worth
I
asking.
think there
It
are,
can't
I think
scale.
there's a lot of difficulty with requiring,
Scale.
Anything.
yeah. I mean, not anything, but
But
a
you
lot
can-
of things, and especially related to energy.
So I just thought planting the seeds about doing that and saying
Yeah.
your communities might be more accepting if you say 50% of our energy is coming from this solar source anyway. So we're less impactful for the community. Those were my thoughts that came out of your presentation and the prompting from the rest of the council. Looks like Representative Abadi and then Councilmember Garamella.
So the example of the cell towers is a really interesting one because we really find ourselves in the same situation. Nobody wants a cell phone tower in their area. Nobody wants a data center in their area. But at the same time, nobody is going to stop using AI to do everything from write their grocery list to design their house. So the data centers aren't going to go away. Like they're going to get built somewhere. But so is this just about keeping it out of our backyard? Is that what we're doing here? You know, like put those things in the desert and just let them go?
So at least for the work that we've done, we are not taking a approach of no data centers or data centers because we have communities that want them in their communities. And so our approach has been, what are the potential negative impacts that can come from it and how can we help communities that may not even be aware of that from research, plan for that. So the way that they're using water, the way that they're using energy, how close they are to residential neighborhoods. There's some things that communities are not regulatorily involved in, and so we're trying to not put that into this and recommend that you take a role that you don't have, but trying to get ahead of that so that if you do want a data center, because there are communities that do, here are best practices to make it as least impactful as it can be, because if they are going somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
I got a lot of questions here. So when you're saying data center, what are you going behind? You're going behind more electricity and water? Is that the two, and noise? Those are the three things you're going behind?
Our definition of hyperscale.
I think it's by megawatt, and there was some conversation about if it
Water
involves
and
size, but yeah.
Water and, the reason I asked that is because what is next? We have Forge Nano. It takes equal amount of water, actually more than, or sometimes, to a data center, because chip manufacturing, all those things comes very high. Pharma also comes not high, but when you have like 10, 15 pharmas in the same area, is almost equivalent to a hyperscale. right? So how are you, by definition, coming, like, you can have 10 farmers in Morrisville, and it's almost consuming water and electricity equal to a hyperscale. So that's the reason I'm asking, who is the target? Is it the data center? Because next I can see it will be pharma, or it could be chip manufacturing, and for sure, I think Marianne Baldwin, when she was the mayor, I asked her specifically because Micron Technologies was supposed to come at VinFast, like $1 billion. And the reason they stepped back is because the Harris nuclear plant did not even allow a gallon of water to be used to any of the other purposes. So they were protective of their water because the nuclear plant needs, all those things, and that's the reason they went to Austin. And that's my thing is, what does the future look like? And that is because at Morrisville, we take a lot of pride in pharma and other stuff.
Any other questions? Or is
That's
that it? Okay.
Oh, I forgot what the question was. Yes. Actually, yes. Do we know what these companies, the criteria companies use to select the site for the data centers?
So we have some sense. We'd love to, if they would share exactly what they're looking for. We know so the town of Apex was one of the first pieces that sort of triggered us to be involved in this topic because they had a proposed development. And so we've had some conversation with them to understand what this developer found to be attractive about the site. The Harris nuclear plant was one of the things that they found to be really attractive, as they were really close to a large energy source. So they are looking for easy access to energy. They're often looking for a lot of land and access to water. Are the large ones. There's others, but that was one of the main reasons they chose the location. It was directly either behind or really close to the Harris plant, and they wanted that source of energy.
Does anyone else have any questions or thoughts to share? Councilmember Johnson?
So I don't really have any questions, but I appreciate the conversation and the update on the work that you all are doing for all of us in the Central Pines region. I think what's more important is what we already are doing and how we're protected. And if we are confident in our UDO that it is protecting us the way we want. And of course, now we're talking special use permit, which is really, I hate and love special use permits, but, if I'm not mistaken, Giselle, that we need to have, anyone that would come in here for a data center has to request through a special use permit. So it's not even a rezoning, but a special use permit process.
I'm gonna look up Michelle to make sure she corrects me if I'm wrong. That is correct, but it's only allowed in the GO district. BAC, sorry, a business activity center zoning.
Okay.
So only within that zoning and requires,
And industrial.
and industrial, and it requires a special use permit if it was to be allowed.
Okay. So, so we've already addressed it. Now, are we comfortable with that is a different question, but we've already addressed it in our UDO. And then I'm going to go back to Councilmember Garamella's comments about there are other uses that are just as a heavy user of electricity and water and all these other things that we have embraced in this town. So for me, this is, and I know for other communities it's different. For other communities, they wanted to put a moratorium because they haven't thought, or they don't have, I don't want to say they haven't thought, but they don't have the UDO as updated as they want. And, but I'm not sure we're in that same boat. I guess that's my comment.
Councilmember Kessler.
So I also had the question about our ordinance, specifically, will Morrisville's ordinance be misaligned with the model ordinance once the model ordinance comes out? Simply because it really was adopted before a lot of the conversations have been happening throughout the country, really, throughout the state. So that's a question there. I don't know. So with the open loop systems, one of the things, this is kind of pertinent in hospitals and some other places, but Legionnaire's disease, that is something that you can, Legionella can grow in a cooling tower. And so if you do have those open loop systems and you place them next to some residential communities, I don't know what the carryover on that is, but it could be a possibility there, and probably hospitals would be the place to look to for how they address that. I also wanted to give a plug for an organization, Run on Climate. They have a lot of data, or not data, but examples and toolkits and whatnot. Some of it looks like it's maybe overlapping with what y'all have, but just a lot of resources there. Treasure trove, basically, you could say. And then I'm also involved with ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, and we have subject matter experts that you can reach out to to that staff, and they might get you connected with someone that's inside the building sort of thing. So especially if you're talking about state building codes, that would be a good resource to pick their brain on some of those regulations and whatnot.
The resources sound great, so we'd love to see them. Just on the ordinance, I don't imagine being adopted the same by each community. We already know some that are in the working group are going to take a much more stringent approach on how far away things need to be, or some of the standards, because each community already has some standards in place. So that's just a comment that it won't be just everyone adopting the exact same thing and you're not adopting it.
And we have resources to sort of look into the legislature and see what the communities are authorized to. You can't go unlimited, right? So there's probably some limits on how stringent they can be, and they might not have the capability to do that in-house. Does that make sense?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So like the notification buffers and things like that, there's probably some maximum set by the legislature if you
Yes.
include that so they know not to exceed. Councilmember Scargis Johnson, please.
Very good. Well, good evening. Thank you for coming out tonight and sharing with us some of your research and next steps. So that's very helpful. Morrisville is an unusual situation in that we don't have a water utility. We rely on Cary providing us with an allocation for our entire town. So with that, if a hyper data center is needing an excessive amount or excessive percentage of our allocation, that is going to be harmful to our community. So looking at our UDO and understanding the parameters of our allocation is important to this town. The electric supply issue has been a challenge in the sense that we have introduced a business sector with biopharma, which is a high consumer of electricity for their light industrial manufacturing and their activities. So we already are in a deficit in our town for electric needs and future planning without any data centers coming into the horizon. So that I struggle with is like, how can we provide what we don't have when we can't even, we strive to provide what we need in order to serve the business and residential community that we have today. And then finally, the noise ordinance is tricky. We just have a simple noise ordinance about so many decibels, you know, no parties after 11, that kind of thing. That is an opportunity to look at a noise ordinance that might have a little more flavor of, you know, ongoing, continuous, intense sounds of certain decibels and looking at those parameters. I think that is an opportunity for our town to revisit the noise ordinance. It's not just the social noises, if you will, or the construction noises. We typically no construction before 7 a.m., that kind of thing. So definitely identified a blind spot for me as to what noise really is and where we might have to think about further definitions of noise for the town. So thank you.
And I had one further thought for your working group, and perhaps you might be able to add value to municipalities that are kind of seeking maybe data centers as an opportunity. Like, what type of redevelopment could they fit in? Like, could they fit in an office that's underused, or flex space or something like that, and how much would they need? So that might be another thing that you can add to your list of things to do.
Yeah, no, that's a great idea. No, and one thing that we didn't touch too much on, we don't have a ton on, there really are not a lot of resources on this, is the conversation of decommissioning of data centers is also something that has come up, partly because we assume the technology will change, and so they may not need the facilities the way they are right now, and what will that mean for any community that has one, but for if it's a community that really wanted one, and then has a non-operational data, no longer needed data center. And so in conversations with DEQ, who's been our best resource on that, there's really no templates on decommissioning for data centers that we've found yet, I don't think. They have some samples for us on solar panel decommissioning as their best answer, but that's just been an interesting, it's not exactly what you were saying, but it made me think of it. Is the decommissioning conversation being a concern?
I'd like to pass it back to our deputy town manager to let us know how our staff has been interacting with this group and what next steps are and how you're using them as a resource, or what you need from us in order to do that more.
Thank you, and thank you to Grace and Elena for the information they have provided to us tonight. So the intent of bringing this to you all is definitely provided as an informational session. Just the work that is occurring here in the region and just making sure that we're plugged in with what's happening. They currently have, what's here is the website where they are putting a lot of information, a lot of the research that they are doing is available on this website. They also have provided access to staff to some of the information they also have on their SharePoint site, and we continue to stay connected to the work that they are doing. They continue to do webinars and different sessions that we can come together and continue to be informed. My question to council is, now that you have received this informational session, what else would you like to hear about? Is this a topic you want to continue to hear about? Is there anything particular that you are interested in for staff to research any further and bring back to you?
Councilmember Kessling and myself.
The question that I was asking earlier about Morrisville's ordinance and UDO and how that aligns with the model ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
That was going to be my question. As soon as you publish your best practices, I'd be interested in knowing what staff will do with that. Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson.
So, to Councilmember Garamella's point, I think we need to define data centers in our UDO much more clearly and in fact add a definition, because I don't like data center generally being in BAC and industrial. I think the hyper data center would only belong in an industrial environment in our town and not in a BAC, just due to some of the safety and health concerns that you were described tonight. But a data center, for the purpose of a small data center that a company needs in order to do their operations, I don't see that to be a problem. And so I want that flexibility to allow our business community to thrive, but not the supersize data centers to be in the wrong place to impact the quality of life. Thank you.
Do we have space in Morrisville? Could we fit a hyperscaler here? No, right? Okay, all right.
That was the reason I was asking question about the
I'm not saying that we don't need it, I'm just saying, I was just asking because I mean, if you need 100 acres for it, we don't have that anywhere. Okay, I don't think we're gonna be the most attractive community for this anyway, but I do agree that we should have some level of protection for ourselves in our UDO.
And most expensive.
Well, yeah, fair point, but also, I mean, if quantum computing shrinks the footprint of the data center, it's still not gonna shrink probably the resource allocations. So, we wanna have clear definitions of what we do and don't want, and the resources that we're willing to expend.
To Mayor Pro Tem's Ravati's comment, we definitely can get more more definition to make sure that we are protected. Yes, we don't have a site that will fit a hyperscale data center. I do want to let you know there is actually, as we were doing a little bit of research, we did find that there is a data center in Morrisville that's been here since the 2000. Is a much smaller scale of a data center, is not really a high use of utilities, but it has been operating for 26 years. And that's probably what we may see more of. We do know that there is some interest for some potential outfits to expand the use of data centers, but again, those are in the smaller scale type of data centers.
I think those are completely fine because that is the need for operations of the particular company. And or we can have the ordinance in such a way that if they are making money of that data center, like say Azure, Microsoft or Google, it's basically they're making money by giving the services, but most of them that you're talking about are only for their internal purposes. I think by definition, if you can tweak it, then pretty much many of the things can be cleared out because that will automatically stop hyperscale and many other big ones.
So, you're absolutely right. We have a very small scale data center already here. And I'm not sure we want to discourage any of that, especially in areas where there's redevelopment opportunities. Not that I want to see a lot of them either, but one thing that I'm interested in when it comes to the special use permit for a data center, I know we ask about impacts, like health impacts on the community. I forget the exact wording we use. It's like health and safety of the community. But are we specifically asking or targeting this concept of noise? The noise, honestly, the noise concerns me more than all the others. The others are concerning as well. But I'm not sure I don't recall us ever really focusing on noise as an issue. So and there's no need to answer it. You don't have to answer it tonight, but because we're going to come back. The noise is going to be something I want to focus in on. We understand all the energy consumption, the water consumption, but the noise is what's going to impact the surrounding area more than anything. Of course, I'm not diminishing, water and energy impacts the community also, but it's the noise that concerns me. And then I also I want to make sure we revisit the BAC too. And, industrial management is one thing in the IM district, but in BAC, that might be something to make sure we're all okay with again. I also would like to know if are sites adjacent to Morrisville, like in RTP or in Durham, if there's someplace out there that we should be concerned about.
Yeah, so I've heard it expressed here that we have some of these life science pharma that might be more resource intensive than a data center. I don't know. I'm sure not as resource intensive as the hyperscale, but certainly it's up there on the same level. So I think the concerns around data centers with the resources that are being consumed, I think it would be worth knowing kind of an equivalent information, you could say, for the things that we do have here and the things that we are trying to attract, to understand the impact of those.
Apples to apples type of idea.
Kind of, yeah.
On the energy side.
I guess a gala apple to a pink lady.
There you go. So,
Anything else? Any other questions?
just a big thank you for all the hard work you've already done and all the help that you're going to be providing to all 50 as we go forward. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. It sounds like from the questions that I just jotted down that you have an interest in. It seems like it will be appropriate to come back with an update on the topic. And perhaps if Central Pines has any additional updates at the time, we can share those with the council and then dive a little bit more into Morrisville itself. But thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you very much. Yeah, why don't we take a 5-minute break? Come back at 7:20. Sound good? And then we'll be talking about the key to the town policy. So we're coming back into session right now with the second of three topics. I'd like to recognize Brandon Zudem, our town manager, to go over the key to the town policy.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you recall, last meeting or a meeting recently, on August 11th, I should say, we had a discussion about a key to the town policy. Again, shared that with you because we have issued a key on 5 different occasions and we've never had a policy for it. So thought it was a good time. There is no pending application, no pending person I'm aware of, which probably makes it even a better time to do it rather than having someone in mind. So we talked through that and you gave me some feedback and asked for some additional information and clarification. So I think the easiest way to do that is walk through the red line version of what was in the policy when I showed it to you the first time and what I've changed, and then can certainly try to answer questions, take comments. My goal, if we can, would be to get any final discussion tonight so that it can be final edited and brought to you on September 8th on consent. So key to the town in the scope, it said the key to the town is a prestigious honor that recognizes individuals who have significantly impacted the town of Morrisville, and I've clarified through their actions or through their visiting the town. That speaks to the dignitaries that was brought up. Definitions, have added a couple of definitions. One for heroic life-saving act, when an individual or group of individuals take action or actions to save the life of another person. Honored presence, when a dignitary or other individual of great importance visits the town of Morrisville and their presence is an honor to the town. So then I've taken this first section that was the criteria for awarding a key to the town and changed it to just speak to those exemplary contributions that was really the focus of the first policy. Then down the line, we'll get to it. I've added a second criteria section more for the dignitaries and the heroics. So 2 different sort of ways to get the key to the town. So in this section, length of service, again, there wasn't consensus among you. I had included a minimum of 10 years, and I've indicated it's at the discretion of council to reduce this requirement in unique circumstances. That gives you that flexibility if you want it. It is at the direct discretion. I'll correct that. All right, and then the nomination and selection process for those, added a reference to timing. Councilmember Garamella recognizing the award takes time to purchase and prepare following approval. Council should work with staff to understand production and scheduling timelines. You know, I think our intent would be, regardless, is to have this be a personalized key to the town. We've also talked briefly that there could be that surprise visit, and we can always keep one on hand that just doesn't have a name on it, and we could still do that. And then we could always add a more personalized one later, something like that. But for now, that just reminds everybody that, you know, don't tell us today if you'd like it tomorrow. Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, I think your suggestion around who could be eligible or who could be on this committee. So I've indicated the mayor or the mayor pro tem, so that's one or the other of the 2, and then 2 members of town council, which can include the mayor pro tem if not serving in lieu of the mayor. And then again, there's a town manager, or I can designate someone from senior leadership, and a department head selected by me.
Really good.
Thank you. So here's that new criteria for awarding a key to the town for a one-time occurrence. 2 primary occurrences which would result in the awarding of a key to the town for a one-time occurrence. An honored presence in Morrisville by a dignitary or another individual deemed by council to be of great importance in the context of visiting the town. Heroic life-saving incident occurring in the Morrisville community in which one or more persons are responsible for saving the life of one or more persons outside of their normal career responsibilities. So we have a way to recognize police officers and firefighters that might do this in the, it's not the norm of every day, but it's a job expectation. Mm-hmm. So this might be, you know, if 2 inspectors are heading to lunch and they see a crash and they save 2 people or 2 residents or 2 passersby, this would be them. So a nomination for this award must come from a member of council. The nominating council member can seek staff assistance in advance of the meeting during which they make their nomination. Council may elect to vote on a nomination the same night it is presented, particularly if the time is of the essence in having the award ready to present. So again, we don't normally ask you to contemplate and vote the same night, but again, if there's a short notice, if there's an ambassador coming that you all want to recognize, that just might be required to do it all in one evening. Again, is that council's discretion to award a key to the town for either of these one-time occurrences based on a majority vote. There will not be a selection committee given the nature of these awards and really the timeliness that we expect a little more with them. The anticipated timing for the award of a key to the town behind you. For a one-time occurrence is anticipated to be 2 weeks from the time council approves such an award. Council may request that staff attempt to expedite this process in unique circumstances. Yeah, that's it. And then there's the application. Happy to take questions. Yes, sir.
I like these ones, but what if, like, going in the, for B, right, it's only talking about a heroic or life-saving incident. What if a kid from Morrisville goes into Olympics or basically does, something that no one else has done? How do you recognize that? In this structure, you cannot.
So,
I know, I'm just thinking.
so again, right now, that technically would probably not fall under this
Couldn't we handle that with a
policy.
proclamation or?
You could do a proclamation, a letter of recognition. If you want that to be something that would be a key to the town, we would have to add another category.
I'm just thinking.
Well, I mean, I think that's, I think if you want to think about, one-time performances by a resident, it needs to be a separate section. And I'm not saying we can't. Respectfully, I'm a little concerned about what's the fourth one and the fifth one and the sixth one, and then we're giving this thing away like it's candy.
So couldn't that fit under A? Couldn't that fit under, the A is for somebody that is visiting.
Is
the town.
visiting, and 2 is pretty specific
Yeah.
for life-saving. Or you can add a line into that, like, heroic life-saving incident or something, like
Or
few
we could
words.
fit it under the first category, like, just it's performing an amazing, a long time service, and we could just waive the years.
10 years,
If
yeah.
we really want, it
Correct,
says
I mean-
right there, we can waive the years.
Yep.
If we really wanted to, I personally don't, but if we did want to do that, we could do it that way.
Other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think if it, I don't, that's a good example, but there's probably 5,000 more examples. So I think we're gonna have to lock in on something, see how it goes, and with everything we do, we can tweak it as time goes on. But I think we could also include that example and many others, quite frankly, in the first category, just reduce the length of service if we want to.
And there's a catch basin anyway, like, it's a discretion of the council.
That in the end.
It's policy, it's your policy. This is really to give you guidelines.
And anybody who's going to the Olympics has put in way, And anybody who's going to the Olympics has put in way more than 10 years of preparation. I'm just saying, that I feel like it fits there. We don't need another category.
What's up? Any other questions, comments?
That's good.
Looks like we're good to bring it back on the consent.
Yeah, that's the plan. I'll make that one edit and we'll bring it back. Cool, thanks.
Thank you very much. That's maybe a record. 7:31. At this time, we'll move on to item 2C, Town Council Roundtable. We'll welcome back Deputy Town Manager Giselle Rodriguez. Bless you.
Good evening again. So this is the time for roundtable. We have 4 new roundtables to be discussed today. There is also has been provided the tracking spreadsheet that has all of the previous roundtables that have been provided, including the one that were submitted the last time with an update for those items. Given the amount of information to be sharing the update on two of them, we added them as memorandums that provide a detailed response to two of those, and those are attachment 3 and 4, and that's for the little libraries and what's in the foodways program. So if we will go over the new ones first, and if there's any questions on the other ones, then we will visit that after we discuss the new ones. So the first one we have is Mayor Potem Rabadi, if you would like to introduce your item.
Thank you. I think that my item is pretty self-explanatory. Safe Child Raleigh is an organization that offers services for free to children where there's a suspicion that they've been sexually assaulted, abused, or neglected. So the investigations into this type of situation can re-traumatize a child in addition to what's already happened to them. Safe Child has a facility where basically the child stays, they have an advocate, and then if they need to see doctors, the doctors are brought in. If they need to see psychologists, the psychologists are brought in. So they have a home base of safety and security during the time of the investigation. So up until now, they've been providing this service for free. I believe all through Wake County. I'm not entirely sure of that, but I believe that's the case. And Carissa Johnson brought this item to me because the Safe Child people had reached out to her and asked if Carrie could start covering their costs because they need a revenue stream in order to continue to provide these services. So the Carrie contribution was going to be about $100,000. I don't know what the Morrisville contribution would end up being. I hope it would be zero. But I think that this is very important work, and I don't think that they should do it for free if they're expressing that they may not be able to continue to do it at the level that they want to do it. So I would like us to consider at least asking staff to find out what our contribution would be and whether that's something that they recommend we undertake.
Any questions, comments? Councilman O'Connor.
So, yes, the Safe Child is an excellent organization. I went for the gala, and in fact, Frank's colleague, Carmichael, she's the president of that association, and we had a meeting, and they have a good amount of money they make, especially in auctioning and all these things. You know, that night they made almost like $250,000 or something. But nevertheless, I think I like the concept what they do, but for us, we don't have a policy to give anything to a nonprofit, and that is it's comes back to that principle, you know, and till we have that policy, this is one of the many of where we fail to do it, because this is, they showed, I went to the facility too, and it's, I think, one in Windale and one in Raleigh or something they have. But if we don't have a policy, then we don't know how to go about it. And Carrie does have policies because they give money to HumSub and all those things, and like they have the funds to distribute. You know, we don't.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Johnson.
So I would kind of echo what Satish says, but I think more than that, I also say, I know I've given to Safe Child, I attended their fundraisers in the past, not the gala, because the gala was too expensive for me, but, and they did raise a lot of money, but they're a fabulous organization doing incredible work, but I don't know to what extent they do work with our police departments, so that would be important to kind of understand. And they are not the only nonprofit that works with our police departments, so now I think there's a lot of precedent setting to think about here, and then fairness too, as to who is working with our police department and working more than another group. I mean, we have Kieran that does domestic violence, and then we're getting into a point now, I know you said to reimburse them, so that sounds like we're entering in some kind of contract, so that's a whole different ballgame for me. So it seems to me this is, and I didn't even mean it, you know, it was supposed to be easy, quick, but there's a lot, I think, that goes into just making a decision to reimburse somebody. And I don't even know how clearly if they approach the town of Cary, they must work in the town of Cary a lot, I would assume. They've never, to my knowledge, approached us, so I don't know what that means.
Well, Carissa had told them that she would speak to the neighboring municipalities, I think was the situation. I said I would put it on a roundtable. You know, if we can't do it, then we can't. I get it.
Mayor Colley?
So sounds like there's recognition of this nonprofit and others doing good work in Morrisville, but we cannot do it because we don't have a nonprofit policy. And we've already done a little work towards it, but this council, well, past councils have not supported just even having a policy in place so that we could consider these things or consider a way to have staff choose these so it's not political. So I guess a sub-ask would be, or we can wait till the end, because it's one of them that we could go over and revisit in order to be able to address these in a timely manner when they do come up, to direct staff to revisit that other roundtable item and say, please create a policy so that we'll have the option. So we don't say, well, this is really great, but we can't because we don't have a policy. So if we think it's a good thing to do, having a policy doesn't commit us to doing anything. It just commits us to having the ability to serve our community in a way that's legal, because there's some things that we cannot expend taxpayer dollars with, but we can work with Dorcas, for example, or something like that. So if anyone wants to react to that now, otherwise I'll bring it back towards the end of this roundtable session.
Councilmember Johnson?
So I gotta look at this a little differently. If staff thinks we need to enter into contracts with folks to with groups to supply support for the work that they're doing, I would like you to bring that forward. So that sounds like something totally different. So,
If I may, Mayor. So I think yes and no to some extent. So I think we do need a policy that speaks to, I think, generally giving any money to any nonprofit. And then I think within that, you could certainly have a discussion about a contract for reimbursement as being one option. You know, another option is you're going to give $5,000 to organization Y and trust them to use it for Morrisville residents. So I think, to me anyway, and I don't want to speak for any of you, but I think those are both within the confines of a nonprofit policy, where you would be agreeing to take taxpayer dollars and be willing to give them to a nonprofit, and we would talk about the criteria under which that could occur. One of those could be a reimbursement contract. One of those could be a donation for services to Morrisville residents. And there's probably others. We still have some research to do. Look at what Cary's doing. Look at what others are doing. We're not reinventing the wheel.
Yes, to expand onto that, related to an alternate, if it was specifically a contract, it will be if we were seeking the services of the company and the company is working directly for the town, which we have other contracts that we do. But for that, there's a solicitation that occurs, and then we will select the most qualified consultant and then utilize that consultant for that particular service. And then we enter into a contract in which we pay for their services. It sounds like on this case, they are particularly working for the victims instead of working directly for the town as the service seeker. Okay, so Councilmember
You'll be bringing up the nonprofit item later.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like people are wanting to talk about it as part of this, although it's essential in order to make this go forward.
I guess my comment is, for this proposal, I would like to know how that would fit in our quote-unquote established nonprofit policy. However, it seems that we do not have a nonprofit policy, so I would like that to be investigated with the, the eventuality of, okay, proposal like this, how would that fit within our policy once we get it established or as we're establishing it?
Thank you.
Our current unofficial policy is not to have a policy and therefore not donate to any specific nonprofit. Because of there's so many good organizations, it becomes difficult related to Save Child and other health and human service organizations. Wake County has a function with health and human services, and I know they are woefully underfunded, like all the health and human services across North Carolina, and we need organizations like these nonprofits to help expand those services. But it is a challenge for a municipality without that health and human services function. So I'm not necessarily in support of establishing a nonprofit, but I'm just kind of expressing frustration with the fact the town doesn't really have health and human services within its remit. And when we have good examples like this of true need, how do we even approach that, fairly? So, thank you.
Thank you. Manager Suleiman?
So I think maybe Councilmember Johnson, to your point, we actually do have one nonprofit that we have a contractual agreement with, and that's the Farmers Market. And so that is, we agree to give them, in some cases, dollars, and in some cases, staff time, and in some cases, we reimburse supplies and materials up to a level. It's very defined in the agreement, but that's an example of where we do that in return for a service provided to the community. So I think, you have that one-off example, but again, it could still fall under a nonprofit policy that whatever that was would be guided by this policy over and above it, because I think that's getting something in return. And that probably leans a little bit towards what Mayor Pro Tem is referring to, depending how you work that out. Because I don't know, it sounds like they're looking for, if we treat this many or support, I apologize, I don't know the exact word to use, but if we support X number of people, you will pay us $10 times X. It's not that, but that sort of thing. So I think there's that, which is a little different from we want to give additional money to a nonprofit and say, use this at your will.
Councilmember Garamella?
So Brandon, do we have a contract with NeighborUp because for affordable housing, and then if they are?
Yes, that's another example.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. And by definition, that is NeighborUp directly working with a town and giving services. Okay.
Right. Any other questions or comments on this roundtable item?
I'll support it now and in the future.
Say that again, Mayor. Apologize.
Sorry.
Can you repeat?
I would just say I would support it now and in the future, supporting this nonprofit and others once we have a policy.
Support the nonprofit, not necessarily the roundtable item moving forward.
I'd support this roundtable item.
Is there,
To
okay?
be clear, the ask is to have staff find out how much a Morrisville contribution would be. That's it. A lot of these related, very important ideas are coming out, but I think very specifically, we need to answer Mayor Pro Tem's question.
So to that question, can I get thumbs up, support, not support?
I support.
I support the ask, yes.
And then do what with it? We don't have a nonprofit policy. I think we're in a circle here.
It gives us a measure that, as we look at
you know, is there this service? Okay, sorry. It gives us a measure of that service so that we understand. Right now, we have no basis for the health and human services sector at all. I mean, maybe it's a broader question of what other contributions are there, allocations. You can't get a specific number necessarily, but quantifying, I think, is helpful information. We might say we still can't because we don't have a policy, but I would like to know basically how much Morrisville, with our dense population, you know, are those resources really being used? Cary's a very large community. Morrisville is not, but we might be surprised how much Morrisville is in need of those services.
Any other comments?
I just have one additional comment, response to Councilmember Scroggins Johnson. There's health and human services at the county level, but then how are those services getting squeezed by the situation that the county's in, where maybe municipalities could chip in a little bit more to support those efforts until the state decides to fund them.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll move on to the next one. Councilmember Kessling has 2 items. The first item will be voluntary pre-application developer review policy.
Yes, so I'd like to direct staff to look into a voluntary public pre-application preview process for legislative rezonings. So before a developer spends significant time and money preparing the formal rezoning, before staff spends their limited capacity on their application, the developer could bring an early conceptual proposal to a public council work session for feedback. This would give the public earlier visibility, give council an opportunity to identify major policy questions sooner, and provide a transparent alternative to developers seeking individual meetings with council members. It would be completely voluntary and non-binding, and I'm sure staff would recommend safeguards to protect the integrity of the formal review process.
Questions? Comments? Councilmember Scroggins Johnson.
I had the honor of discussing this with Harrison prior to this meeting, and I just want to clarify, it really truly is an optional opportunity proposed for a developer or a large project, even a small project that might have some unique characteristics. But for years, we had always thought for some of the more complex projects, it might have been easier to first go to council and get a read, then send it to planning and zoning board to get a little more fine tuning, and then have it bring it back up. Versus today, the first time we really can react to something is after P&Z has had a chance to look at it. And sometimes that is with a lot of work, time, and effort that has been expended on the project. And when council has a reaction that causes rework, it's more expensive, and it really elongates the process. So this isn't, even though it adds a step in possibly initial time, it's an investment and cost savings for the town as well as the applicant, optionally. So it's not every single one to put a huge burden on, but it does, like some of the rezonings, I can, at least 5 different examples where this might have been a really helpful tool for everybody. Thank you.
Councilmember Garamella.
I think Cary does something like that, to my knowledge. They have the initial, yes, no kind of a thing and goes back. But again, for the way we conduct our meetings, like already 5 hours, 6 hours, and when we bring these kind of things, with no staff input and just hearing from a developer, we are getting into operations, I feel, and where we may like it, but understanding there are like a lot of caveats and a lot of rules and regulations that have to be streamlined by the staff before it comes to us, because sitting on the dais is, wow, that's a great idea, So what? then what? Because it has to go back to them and say, are they getting the yield of how many apartments they're doing? Are they getting the square footage, how many they're doing? So we are not in the space at all.
I'll give you examples.
But I'm just saying, it just adds up. It just adds up our time here. And it never reduces because we talk for every small thing.
Mayor Pro Tem Robati.
So I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea, but I think that shouldn't this be happening at the staff level when a developer brings a project to this? Like, most of the staff has known us, they've known some of you guys for 28 years. It seems to me that the staff should be fully able to guide a developer and say, Councilmember Kessling is going to ask you about sustainability, just put it in now. I'm going to ask about, I don't know, plants, other people are going to ask about, they brought hundreds of proposals to us. So I guess my question is, what's the difference between, if there's a value add in a developer hearing from council, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm not exactly clear on where the delta is between what they would hear from staff and what they would hear from us in that situation.
If I may, let me try to answer that question before I move to Councilmember Scroggins Johnson. So the way the process works now, and with Councilmember Johnson being in council a little longer, and also Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, there have been multiple things that over time has been delegated to staff to handle that as a more of an administrative item. For rezonings, applicants are required to have a pre-application with staff, and they can have as many pre-applications as they want to. Like, they can have a pre-application before the official one. They can come back for a second pre-application. And in a lot of cases, you may have received some phone calls from some of developers that may be interested on hearing from your opinion individually before they make an official submission. Very much like the way you described it, that staff will specifically tell them, this is what our council will be looking for. That's exactly how the meetings go. The meetings are very detailed as to what the interest of council is. And what staff does through those meetings is they enter into a negotiation process for conditions. All conditions have to be offered voluntarily. So what they do is, understanding what council's typical feedback is and some of the concerns and requests from council, they incorporate that into recommended conditions so that the developer can elect to offer those in exchange for whatever concession they are requesting. But that's essentially the way it goes, is staff will always lead those conversations with the developers, with council's direction, with the priorities that they have heard from council, and making sure that those are incorporated so that they are bringing forward a recommendation that staff believes align with a project that council would support. And that's what the process is now.
So I'm sorry. So thank you for that, because I think, and I don't want to speak for Councilmember Kessling, but I think what he's trying to get at is he wants to make that part that is happening more transparent to the public. And so how do we make that happen? And maybe it's not worded as a pre-application, maybe this is worded something very differently, but I think that's the gist of it. I agree 100% with you. There are projects over the years that were so ridiculous and so horrendous that they never made it to the public because council members put a stop to it or staff put a stop to it. But that was all happening kind of behind the scenes. And it's really hard to articulate that publicly. And I tried to do that many years, trying to explain to people that it's the best stuff, or the stuff that sometimes we have no ability to change it too. There's often zoning that's already in play that we don't have the ability to change. But anyhow, but I think that's the gist of it, how to make all of that much more public and transparent.
Basis, I would support it. That makes a lot of sense.
Go to Councilmember Scroggins Johnson.
That's really funny, Councilmember Johnson. I was about to, that was my point.
Sorry.
It's like an early warning system, right? I mean, we've had several rezonings and some projects where the public finds out on a Thursday and we talk about it at the town council level on a Tuesday. And they're major projects, major rezonings, 20 different conditions. It's not fair to the public when they may or may not miss a meeting, and it just, I remember years ago, we had brief twice, vote once, where that cadence allowed for the public to first be aware of something. This was a town council business meeting, so we had different kind of meeting formats, but we would introduce the item, get some initial feedback, bring it back, have a robust discussion. Then the third meeting, we would vote. And that gave the public time to be alerted, give some feedback initially, show up to the discussion meeting to help us kind of vet out some items. And then the final vote was after that, so that we came upon a better solution without having continuous rework. And then there were some projects, because there was so much complexity, it was delayed 18 months, So the, brief twice, vote once was something that I think is similar, but it's just a different sequence to what you're proposing. So.
Mayor Colley.
So I appreciate everyone's input into this and for you bringing this forward in the first place. So I like the transparency idea. I'm a little afraid and concerned about getting in ahead of staff before staff has those discussions and shares with them what they think that the council would accept. Because if they bring something early to us and we say, oh yeah, that sounds great, then staff is not in a negotiating position anymore.
Maybe it's something staff could suggest.
So I'm trying to find the way to do it so it's after those discussions, but before the planning and zoning meeting. So that would be a way to, and we'll recognize him in a second. Thank you for letting me know. So that would be my thought about the timing. Give staff their chance to negotiate. And if it looks like it's a non-starter anyway, they're going to go away. Like the 55 plus units. It would have been nice if we saw that before the planning and zoning meeting so they knew they needed to do a neighborhood meeting. Because that one where people felt like it was too late for them, this would take that, make it easier. And staff now knows you should probably do a neighborhood meeting for certain things. So they can encourage that going forward. So that would be I would support this if we did it that way and didn't put staff in an awkward position, but get it in front of planning and zoning so that people could speak at planning and zoning if they want, and then they have time to speak to us. I'd like to recognize the town manager.
So, Mayor, I do think the timing is critical if you wish to pursue this. This has to come after at least the first staff conversation that typically occurs in a pre-submittal. But what you don't want is a project coming to you that staff has, and I think I'm repeating you, and not you, but council, because staff has to evaluate that, because what you don't want is I think a developer innocently or otherwise coming before you and suggesting they're going to do X, Y, and Z, and we don't know if they're allowed by the UDO to, and staff can answer some of those questions in the moment of a meeting, but some of that requires research and some of that has questions to it, and there's a lot of work to be done. So I think that would be my first point, was that it would have to come after an opportunity for staff to review it. And then I would also recommend that if we're going to allow for this, that is a developer-driven presentation. There should not be an expectation for staff work to accompany that, because I think we're just creating redundant workload at that point. So I would also suggest that would be an important part of it. And I think, Councilmember Kesling, if I may, this came, I think, from a Garner project or a Garner approach to doing this work. And so that's what I talked to, their assistant town manager. They do it after a staff review, and then they have a chance to do this in a meeting. And again, I realize it doesn't address the transparency component, but there's always still developers that are going to try to reach out to you individually in small group, because they may want to talk to you, and when they're not in front of a room of people, depending on the nature of their project, or if they're trying to hold anything back from public consumption for any variety of perfectly good reasons.
Councilmember Patel? Oh, sorry.
So I would agree, first of all, thank you for bringing this as a roundtable item, and I think you and I have discussed this topic, and you have addressed a couple of concerns that I had, and yes, I agree with the mayor and town manager that as long as it comes after that first step of have staff discussion, then I support it.
Councilmember Kesling, from my perspective, just a point of clarification I wanted to reach with you, because you are the sponsor of the item, just making sure that it's going in the direction that you intended it. You included transparency and also council input. If I understood from Councilmember Johnson, she supported the adding some level of transparency component. And my question to you as a sponsor, is the interest and end goal to increase transparency to the community, or to include earlier input from council? Because that's two different things.
I think that what the mayor proposed does both.
So I'll, I guess, address some of the things that I heard, and then also kind of give my thoughts on it. Complex projects are increasing. That's one thing. And we certainly have limited land. So is the juice worth the squeeze kind of component on this? And you don't want to be in a position where you're having to decide whether to squeeze the juice. And the community's watching us squeeze the juice, and it's causing friction within the community. That's certainly something. Even if staff has those meetings and gives those recommendations, that doesn't seem to stop developers from reaching out. So it seems, for the interest of transparency, and for the, in the public interest, that as individual counselors, nothing would preclude a council member from having an individual meeting with the developer. But I think having, normalizing a process, well, we have this, voluntary developer preview. And if you are, if you're serious about this project, we will direct you to that if you'd like to do that. And you can end it there with, we're, don't want to have that kind of conversation, with you in private. We'd rather have that in public setting. So that's another thing. And then it does seem a little bit strange that staff speaks for us on policy. These are legislative rezonings that we decide, and they are essentially a policy question of, what are we, what are we approving here? So that's kind of another component to it as well. I think still having the meeting is important, but certainly making the, and it's ultimately, or not ultimately, but a lot of it is for the public, right? We're here to serve the public. The public, this is one of the things that the public is very sensitive about, right? And so just trying to bring them into the conversation a little bit earlier, not that it would be a public hearing at that time, but, maybe we do have this meeting and we do give our thoughts, we do give our concerns, and that would show the community that we are looking out for them, instead of just having to decide on something, with them not thinking that we're listening to them. That's a lot of words to say. Yes, transparency, certainly getting councils, letting the public see how council is approaching these projects.
Councilmember Garavella?
I hear what you're saying. The timing is everything. I'll give you an example. A pre-submittal happens, and then they'll come and do voluntary pre-thing. The time from when they do the pre-submittal to the final submittal is almost like what, maybe 6, 7, 8 months. And so we are creating a perception that not even knowing we will vote for it or not vote for it, but you're creating that stir without even knowing what your end product we are getting out of it. So that unnecessary creates in a transparency is great, but it's also creating a lot of rumbling and anxiety, not knowing how we are as a council is going and how the staff is going to do it, because all the technicalities they sort it out and then it comes to us. So it's almost like 7, 8 months. So I don't know if like people have that much memory that unless it's a bigger issues, they'll forget about it. So, and the anxiety still remains. I'm just thinking because you guys have to tell me how much time does it take. Not every pre-submittal actually becomes a submittal too, as I would say, like one. So the anxiety is already created, but they never submitted. So then what happens?
I would ask the staff to provide some direction on that, but I think that all the points still stand that this is an opportunity to allow. I know that it's a year from when it actually gets decided. You can have those conversations with your community, and certainly, okay, well, what maybe I didn't address the things that my community cared about in that developer preview, but now I'm having those conversations with my community on this. Instead of it being that kind of tense moment when we're actually having to decide and we're actually having to, balance all of those things, I think it would also, this is another thing that kind of, ease our, burden a little bit, because we can work with our community and we can work with the developers to make sure that what they are selling to us essentially is something that the community actually wants. And if they know about that before they spend the time and the energy and staff's time and energy to, do all this, then I would assume that would be resources saved.
And your interest is for that to be a council conversation?
Ideally, yes.
Okay. So staff will direct staff to investigate and bring back. Thank you. And you can proceed with your next item, which is...
So if folks are interested, I did print this out. Only got 5 though, but this is the Strong Towns Financial Decoder. I was mentioning it at the retreat. So I'll just give a brief explanation of Strong Towns. It's a framework, and there's 3 components that come to my mind, which is street safety, housing affordability, and municipal finance, all with an underlying community engagement component. And different communities engage in different ways. So just kind of setting that as the scene. So the most pressing need and opportunity is the municipal finance component, which is where this finance decoder comes in. And I had reached out to several municipalities, and the core question, just trying to have conversations about how are they using these frameworks, and how are they thinking about some of these things. And the core question is our growth and development creating enough value to support the infrastructure and services we are committing to maintain? So what I understand about this finance decoder is that it extracts already existing data from our annual comprehensive financial reports to evaluate sustainability, flexibility, and vulnerability metrics over a multi-year timeline to help answer that very question. And I can give an example from so the financial assets, the total liabilities chart can show a rising trend, meaning the city is improving its financial buffer, or a falling trend, meaning the city is becoming less able to handle its obligations without borrowing or cutting services. And the data that I've gathered on Morrisville shows, a slightly downward trend. So, which may be indicative of the conversations we've been having as of late.
Would it not be beneficial to use this free Excel-based tool that requires no license to investigate our financial position and take a higher level view of where we as a community are to help us determine how to achieve our fiscal resiliency?
That's your question.
Mayor Pro Tem Rabadi.
I would support having the IT team evaluate the tool. And if the tool is safe to put our information into, and if the underlying formulas are what's being proposed here, I think it's a great idea.
So just so you're aware, our data is in Strong Towns. It's been entered into Strong Towns already, not by us.
Yes,
Well, in that case, somebody else.
I'll share that there's 140 communities with this data using the finance decoder already out there. That's not necessarily municipalities. That could also be community groups that are doing this. It's a very community aligned framework, essentially. But it is something I did also want to mention as well. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board is already looking at changing the reporting standards of infrastructure assets by 2028. So this may also offer a way to help us prepare for that new requirement as well.
I'm not sure which one went up first. Councilmember Patel.
Okay, sure. Thank you for doing all the research and bringing this as a roundtable item, Councilor Castling. Sorry, I was just thanking Councilor Castling for doing his research and bringing this to us as a roundtable item, and I will support it.
Okay, so I think this is a rather innovative way at kind of looking at the fact that we are nearing build out and we have to understand our, what I call like a reserve study, or how much of, where is our value going? How much will we have to do refurbishment or replacement over time as well? So it's not just, are we getting our ROI, but for me, it's like, when are we going to have some major replacements of our infrastructure that ultimately ties into this financials as well? So that might be an advanced question, but I think of infrastructure as not just a constant, it's also something that needs care and feeding. And I support this. Thank you.
Mayor Colley.
I support it. I think it would be a good additional data point for decision making.
Is this our information? I'm sorry, maybe you
Yes.
said that. Okay, sorry.
It's,
Okay.
I input it and I uploaded it actually about a year and a half ago, I think. When I was involved in the Strong Towns group. I was not involved in the invitation Saturday, but I was involved with the group for a little while. And this was something that, was discussed and talked about. But yes, it is Morrisville's data. One of the points that I would ask is certainly to validate that data.
Yes.
Because, right, maybe I put a zero in wrong or something. I'm sitting here, it's like, oh, what's this?
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you.
I did want to add, just for the record, from our organizational resiliency document, so where the town has been investing approximately $1 million to $1.2 million annually, that may need to increase in the coming years to maintain a PCI score of 80 or higher, right? So that, directly feeds into this. And I appreciate everybody's support.
PCI pavement condition.
Yes, pavement condition index.
Thank you. So our last new roundtable item is from Councilmember Johnson.
Do we want to formally vote on that, like thumbs up or something?
I think we were doing.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
We were shaking heads.
Everybody said support it individually, so I was counting and we had enough support.
Okay, so this one is really quick and short. It has to do with our advisory committee application. And what I put in here is twofold. One is, are we asking the right questions? Do we want a review of that? That's kind of the lesser of the two asks. And then the most important ask for me, there's a question on there where we actually ask the applicant what their party affiliation is. And for the life of me, I don't know why we put that on there. In the recent couple of months, I've heard from multiple people, and I'm talking people that don't know each other, people from different parts of this community who have expressed a concern about that question. And when I hear that from multiple people, and again, from multiple people that don't know each other from all different worlds here in this town, it rises to a point where I think we need to have a discussion about it. Again, don't know why we put it in there. I'm assuming, this is a big assumption because I really don't remember the conversation. I'm assuming we were asking to make sure we had a diverse group of people on our committees of different backgrounds and thought processes, but it's not coming across that way.
It wasn't a loaded question back then.
No, it was not a loaded question. You are correct. You are correct. It is not coming across that way now. It's being perceived as a litmus test, and that is far from what I want for sure, and I'm sure all of you. So I'd like that question removed ASAP, but I'd also like us to make sure that the application is the way we like it. And just to also to be transparent, that question about your party affiliation, it is not a required field. So you don't have to answer it, because I went out there to, I know, so I don't, just get rid of it.
Yeah,
That would be my ask.
Yeah, that's icky. I don't like it.
So I echo, I'd say remove that immediately, optional or not, because we are asking for residents of Morrisville to apply to our advisory committees, and not everybody has the ability to vote in our town. And so we have to be very, respectful of that. We want to encourage a diverse group of people. We're immediately isolating a part of the population, so I really think that we need to remove that. But I would like to ask if we could look at that application form as a group maybe, and just kind of all, not tonight, but look at that and say, are these asking the right questions that we need in order to appoint the right people for our committees? Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Rabadi?
I would actually like to, with Councilmember Johnson's permission, expand this item to look at the application process, because I spoke to someone this morning that wants to be on one of our committees. And what she said to me was, you fill out the application and it goes into a black hole. And I don't know if I'm on the ballot this time. I don't know if I was on the ballot last time. And I think that there's always room to improve the process. And with Kayla here and Kimberly, I think that it's time to take a look at that process and see if we're doing everything we can to make it a positive user experience in addition to the form.
I totally agree. Councilmember Kessley? I apologize. I think I have Patel first. Apologies.
Oh, yeah. So, thank you for bringing this up, Councilor Johnson, because I myself was wondering, first time I looked at this question, I thought what you just explained, that maybe it was for diversity, but in today's political climate, I think it may give an impression that we're making our decisions based on the information they provide on that question. So yes, 100% take it out, and I also agree with Mayor Pro Tem, we should revisit the entire process and review other questions as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Kessley?
Yes, I agree with removing it. Something that I was actually thinking about, I'm sure that not everybody knows every single applicant that applies. And I know that some of the more successful applicants do either know some people, or they come and give a public comment, or they give an email. So I think figuring out how to encourage folks who do apply to if they're not already showing up to that committee meeting, definitely encourage them to show up to the committee meeting, but then also come and, give a public comment. I think we're always wanting to get more people, to our meetings and communicating with us and whatnot. And so I think not necessarily requiring that you got to give a public comment at town council meeting, but perhaps that is to bolster your application, let's say, it is recommended that you attend the town council meeting, attend the committee advisory meeting, things like that, to provide some more direction, like you said, so that it's not just a black hole.
Mayor?
Yeah, we do ask the question, have you attended any of the committee meetings or anything? But they're replying, so it's too late to encourage them to do that. So we ask to just keep encouraging them to be part of the meetings even before they're members. But I support the roundtable item, so thanks for bringing it forward.
I believe I heard support. Okay, so that concludes all the new items. We have provided the spreadsheet with the tracking of the old items. Are there any questions, any of them that would like to be discussed? I know Mayor Colley had mentioned the one about nonprofit. Mayor Colley?
Yeah, we can just bring it up. It's way at the very end. Essentially, we brought it up in 21 and then again in 24, and there wasn't really support. Now we're in a different environment, and I think it's to have the opportunity to give staff the opportunity to provide grants or something to nonprofits to give a little bit more wraparound. I think would be really helpful. We saw Save Child today, which would be really good. I know that Neighbor Up provides funds to Morrisville residents in a way that in order to keep on doing that, they could probably use a little bit additional support. So if we do care about making sure no one is left behind, I think just having a nonprofit policy in place gives us the opportunity to be reactive and not just see this again in 2 years and say, well, we couldn't do it because we didn't have a nonprofit policy. So I hope that you'll just support having staff. Just like our town managers created a policy about the key pretty quickly. This is a little more complicated because there's other towns doing it already, but I think he could put together a framework for our examination as a briefing item.
So I am showing above on the screen, this is the last update that staff provided based on the research. There have been multiple updates provided, and this is the latest one. There's background here about different research that staff conducted looking into other municipalities and what are others doing and what staff is recommending on our case. As you can see in the last sentence, staff does not recommend pursuing development of a nonprofit funding policy at this time, but if there's a specific need or policy objective to be identified in the future, it can be revisited.
When is the date of that update?
This is the last update, so it would have been the August update.
Okay. And why would staff not recommend? Because we've talked during budgets and everything like that, that we don't want people being left behind.
Understand. My recollection speaking with Tiffany, because she also had administered a program in the past, managing the compliance component of the nonprofit becomes a heavy administrative duty, and oftentimes it becomes very hard to manage the program. And based on what the research that staff had completed on all the municipalities that had been doing the program, seemed like there were some different ways of doing the program in which there was some inconsistencies on the way that it was being administered, and in a lot of cases it felt like it would definitely be an additional load that it's not something that we are currently, like on this case, if it was to be economic development, definitely there's no capacity there for the additional overload that will be required. On this, I think there is one particular case where they looked at the applications were actually being reviewed by council. So some of that will come directly for the council that will need to be reviewed and is something to be considered as well. And there are different levels out there. There are municipalities that are allocating 100,000, others that are allocating 25,000, and just making awards depending on what the specific policy might be.
Yeah, I mean, as was noted, there's so many good, valid organizations that there's more reason to actually create a policy and to make it work for our town than the other way around. So,
And it will be up to,
Another
it is
time?
entirely up to council. Mayor Pro Tem Rabati?
I actually kind of like the idea of the council making the decision, but so I don't necessarily think there's any overhead until such a policy is funded, in which case then there would be overhead. And I think that it's not a bad idea to have the policy, and then when we're ready to make some type of, when we're ready to dip our toe in that water, then we have the policy. Because what I don't want to do is to have a year when we suddenly find ourselves with $100,000 that could do a lot of good in the community, and then have to wait a year while we develop a policy. So I would be in favor of having a policy.
Councilmember Cassidy?
So I don't think that I'm going so far as staff pursue development of a nonprofit policy at this time. But I do think it would be worth, since, we have this conversation, not say frequently, but, it's an active conversation that we are having. I think it would be good to have, the information and the research that staff has done so far in something like a white paper that, is available to us so that, when we're having this conversation again, we can review it. And I would hope that provide, if we did have a policy, this is what would kind of, this is what all would be included in that policy or would be encompassing of that policy, or considerations of that policy. And then it's something as easy as, once the, if once conditions change, it might be easy to ramp up that policy.
But it sounds like it's going to be more trouble to produce that white paper than it would. No, I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. I think what you're talking about is a lot of work to come up with what the policy would be if we were to implement it, and like a lot of background research. But really, I think that staff has already done the research and could develop the policy more easily than they could develop a white paper on the subject.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson?
So I don't support developing a policy draft at this time. One of my concerns is that we are collecting tax dollars and funding from multiple revenue sources, and for us to reallocate to only a few nonprofits is really, I think, premature at this time. I'm not feeling very comfortable reallocating tax dollars for nonprofits, even though they're all worthy. I'm just not ready for the policy at this time. So I would like to see what research has been done, but I think we're still too early.
Councilmember Garamella?
No, I agree. For me, I know we don't have a policy. I get it, but that is for a reason. We went to the budget. Every 200,000 or every 250, we are trying to scramble from here and there. And we are not carry. They have an $800 million budget. For us, every $50,000 is accounted for. And when even if you have a policy and say we have 50,000 or 100,000 allocated to it, it will become so politically charged that we gave it to them, we did not give it to this one, and that temple got it, this temple did not get it, that church got it, this did not get it. We are setting up ourselves for a big, face-off with the community. Is what I feel, and because I would, if a policy was there, I would help the seniors who are not able to pay taxes. We don't have that policy, so there's so many things that you can do, but we don't have those dollars to, we are very, very thin stretched. So that's what I would say.
Any other comments or questions? Councilwoman Johnson?
So this is coming from somebody who works with several nonprofits. I am constantly trying to raise money for nonprofits. I'm not in favor of nonprofit policy at this time for a lot of the reasons that were just discussed. And honestly, and I've said this before when we've had these conversations, this is just not something I'm hearing the community wants us to invest in. I am not hearing that. I am hearing all kinds of other things about how we spend our money and what we should spend it on. This one never, I do not hear a clamoring from the community that they want us to spend their taxpayers' money on nonprofits that we choose. I'm not hearing that. And I'm hearing that from a community that I think is very generous. I think we have a community that does support a ton of nonprofits, associated with the temples, nonprofits that serve our community. I'm hearing from a very generous community, but they're taking care of that on their own. And I think they can continue to do that in a thoughtful way on their own without us getting in the mix.
Mayor Colley?
And I would just respond that Safe Child, Neighbor Up, the seniors, they are saying otherwise, that the community has needs, and the people who are benefiting, they're not the people who have time to talk to us about how they would like to see there's some support there so that their families could thrive more. So I'm going to keep on trying to bring this up because I think having a policy gives us the opportunity for when one of us says something like, yeah, Safe Child's doing great work, but we don't have a nonprofit policy, that we won't hear that anymore. We'll hear Safe Child's doing good work. Let's have staff set up a grant program so these different organizations can come in, ask for small grants, large grants, whatever is appropriate, and I believe that the community would support it. So I'm sorry that this one, once again, is not moving forward to just have a simple policy enacted by this council.
So I just want to say that, yes, I agree that if we create a policy, then it will be a question of who do we provide funds to and who we don't. But perhaps we can help these nonprofits in a different way, raising awareness about the work they do, right? I did not know about this nonprofit until today, right? So perhaps town can help them raise funds other way instead of us funding them directly. So there is something to think about.
I love that idea. Can I add to that? I love
Yeah,
that idea.
absolutely.
At our events, we are really good about inviting our different advisory committees to have tents and establish a presence. And we have done it for some nonprofits. Can we make that maybe a priority to invite some of these nonprofits? And I think we do to some extent.
I saw Kieran.
Kieran is at Diwali, but I like all our events.
I think that's a great idea.
And
Yeah,
that's
it's
another
helpful.
way to help.
The Veterans Memorial.
Well,
Yeah.
yes. So we did at one time on our website, we had a list of nonprofits. We had a list, or am I making that up? I may be going way back. We used to share all kinds of information, And so that might be, yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I'm talking about more than just sharing the list, like perhaps something along the lines of at every town event, we have one or two nonprofits,
That we highlight.
we have a booth for them or whatever. And that could actually raise awareness to people who know about them, and maybe that would be very helpful for them.
I love that. And add on the fact that these are nonprofits that are doing work here in Morrisville.
Yes.
So, yeah, yeah.
Our comms team can highlight every month one. and
Yes.
So that way.
Yeah, on social media, and we can all help them promote them on our social media, yeah.
That's a great idea. I think we should put together a policy to create that opportunity.
I wanted to add, well, I just wanted to add that we have the small business listings directory, so having a nonprofit directory would be good as well.
Any other questions or comments? Well, this concludes roundtable. Thank you.
I would like to recognize the town manager. I'd like to recognize the town manager.
Super quick. Just, we have made some adjustments, sorry, that's super loud, to the rolling calendar. And I just want to make sure, so your time with David Hacker related to my evaluation is now scheduled for September 22nd and October 13th. And obviously, I think it's critical that all seven, you just wanted to touch base and make sure nobody has any conflicts with September 22nd or October 3rd. They're both regularly scheduled Tuesday meetings. September 22nd and October 13th.
Oh, 13th. I'm sorry. I thought I heard a different number. Okay. A different date. Sorry. I thought he said 3rd. That's right.
These are both regular council meetings. That you'll have a closed session during those two council meetings. Just occasionally folks have conflicts, just want to make sure we have everybody anticipating being there.
Brandon, remind me why we are having our work session the first Thursday of this month?
I'm
next
sorry,
month.
why are we having
our work session on September 10th instead of the last week?
Typically, they're later in the month. That's
We do, and I think there was a conflict when we developed the calendar, that there was something, let me get my stuff open.
International Festival's coming to mind.
Yeah, because that has out, that I will be out of town because I was always planned for,
Well, we approved the calendar, that's November.
no, it's next month, September 10th.
I can look back, I don't recall tonight the
Yeah,
specific
so,
reason.
yeah, I get it, I just saw it because the idea was always the,
Yeah.
second.
And again, so Kayla is already working on the calendar for next year. Again, you should have information from her about January and early February, particularly about retreat, because we'd like to get that settled as soon as practical, because again, getting a lot of us together is not the easiest path to take. So the sooner you can respond on that, the sooner we get you a draft calendar and we can get something adopted for calendar year 2027. But again, as long as everybody can be here September 22nd and October 13th, that will be incredibly helpful.
I don't have my phone with me. Would you mind texting out those dates so I can check my calendar?
Sure.
Thank you.
Anything else from council?
I had one thing on the food waste pilot. Appreciate everybody's support to investigate that, and like that, we got the pilot in for our food waste that we have there, and I just want to say appreciate that support and also appreciate the quick turnaround on that.
Wonderful. Staff's doing a great job. Anything else for the good of the order, sir?
Nope.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that.
So Mayor Protem has the motion to adjourn. Councilmember Patel, second. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously 7-0. It is 8:40 PM. Thank you.